Hello everyone, and welcome back to another Heartwell dev stream, the live stream series where I continue to develop this adorable Souls-like action RPG with platforming mechanics and a branching narrative. And if you enjoy watching these dev streams, be sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel and boop that bell button to stay notified. Now, when you were last leaving off, we got quite a bit of platforming sections all squared away. So what I mean by that is, if you notice, the actual collision for the different platforms for much of this lower half are now completed. Now, there's still plenty to do on this lower half. I mean, obviously right there we shouldn't be able to walk up that wall, but that's because there's the only way to get to this section will still remain in frame. But we have been hard at work programming all the wall and platform collisions for these different areas, and that's what we're going to be continuing to do tonight. We're going to continue putting more platforms together, hopefully try to finish up this bottom section just in terms of collisions, and then after that probably start seeing if we can move some enemies into this area so that we can start testing that out. That should be a lot of fun. So first things first, let's figure out where we left off, and I think we left off towards excuse me, the middle here. Let's start with that. All right. Hello, Copper Nicholson. Thanks for dropping by. How's it going? Oh, you're at the gym? Okay, no worries, Copper Nicholson. Thanks for thanks for the alert, and have fun at the gym with your brother. It's important to stay healthy. And it's a lot of fun when you're exercising with people you care about. Oh, also, just heads up, you think Dragon Prince Season 4 will stay? Let me know what you think of after. Well, I haven't seen Dragon Prince Season 4, but I'll definitely keep it in mind. I'll definitely keep it in mind as I'm figuring out what to watch. So I remember enjoying watching the Dragon Prince on Netflix when it came out. The one criticism I'd have for it, at least the original 3 seasons of Dragon Prince, is that it felt kind of rushed. I understand that it was rushed because that's all they could do at the time. Like, I really like the concept of the show, and like all the characterization and such they do throughout it. It's just that I felt like the ending to season 3 felt quite rushed. Even if overall I thought the quality was very, very, very good. Because for those who don't know, Dragon Prince was made by the same people who made Avatar: The Last Airbender, and you can definitely tell. Especially since the main character's English voice actor, well, one of the main character's English voice actor is literally the same English VA that the character Sokka had. So that was very recognizable, at least for me, as someone who really liked Avatar: The Last Airbender. You're telling me Fortnite is canon in the Dragon Prince universe? What? I find that very hard to believe, Dr. Nicholson. I find that very hard to believe, considering it's a medieval sort of universe. Now hold on, Tapper Nicholson. Just because you don't specifically like Fortnite doesn't mean you have to be angry about it. There's some people who genuinely enjoy Fortnite. You know, if you do, then that's, you know, that's your opinion. It depends on what you're looking for in a video game, I'd say. And that's the interest. I think that's an interesting thing. That brings up an interesting topic about battle royales and things of that nature. Oh, who says you don't like Fortnite? Well, fair enough. But I thought when you were saying Copper Nicholson, like, oh, what dark magic created Fortnite? That to me sounds like a negative thing. Like, you generally don't say, oh, well, dark magic created this beautiful thing. No, usually you say if dark magic created something, it's usually a bad thing. You know? And I'm also realizing we actually don't need a little wall tile here because we can just move the impassable wall down. Save on the resource. Quick reminder, chat. So for those who might be watching this for the first time on YouTube, in Fusion 2.5, there's a big difference between active objects and backdrop objects in terms of performance. So general principle is that backdrop objects use a lot less compute processing power than active objects do, even if the active objects are duplicated, or the backdrop objects are duplicated, as an order or magnitude difference. I think the limits for like individual active objects is like 20,000 or something, whereas for backdrop objects is well over 60,000. So you can have a lot more backdrop objects without harming performance. That's extremely important, and that's why when you see me doing things like this, if there's a section where functionally we don't need a higher elevated wall, yeah, I find it better to use our handy-dandy quick backdrop objects like this to make sure that isn't a problem. Yes, Copper Nickel said. Well, dark magic, Copper Nicholson, is usually associated with evil if we're talking about different kinds of video games or stories of that effect. That's why I bring that up. Now, that might seem a bit odd to bring up considering that Heartwell, with its elemental system, actually doesn't have a quote-unquote dark type. And that, of course, is quite by design. I mean, with the way I've designed Heartwell's different elements, if you will, physical is the default. And there's fire, earth, electric, wind, water, ice, and then, of course, there's light. But there's no dark. You might say, well, why is that, Antomicx? Well, because I think it fits better with what I'm going for with Heartwell's narrative, personally. So I see light as sort of the rarest element to consider, and like physical is sort of like the bare bones thing. But to go much further beyond that would be probably getting into a bit too deep into the lore for my liking, given that I prefer you guys to experience the demo fairly blind to the story and the lore, so you can form your own takes on it. And also, why do I have that slope there? Does that slope make any sense? I wonder if that slope's a leftover. It probably is. Yeah. Yeah, I'm looking at this and it's like, why does this need to be here? Why have a lower slope like this? You make no sense. Well, actually, there might be a reason for it. It depends on enemy placement. Let me check. Aha! Okay, there was enemy placement here. Okay. Actually, wait a minute. That's left over. Yeah, no, that enemy placement is definitely left over. All right. In that case, yeah, I see no reason why it needs to be a drop down like that. We could just use this as a section to save a bit on resources, I think. Yeah. How to handle this? Also, for those who might be looking at the UI around here, be looking, Antomicx, what happened to Fusion 2.5's UI? Looks a lot more colorful and different. This is actually an effect of an update that happened to Fusion 2.5 towards the end of October. I think it was called build R like 492 or something, or 292 or something. But the point is, it's a new build of Clickteam Fusion. It was an update to Clickteam Fusion 2.5 that made some pretty massive pretty massively useful additions. And the one that I felt was the most useful addition is the inclusion of a index value. So let's see if there is an instance value. So if it's saying, what the heck does this Antomicx? So this allows us to store a value for each instance created in a frame error. So if I were to do this like a value of 1,000, it would be different than this one. So if it's like argument, let's do that. So let's say this is 50. I go over to the next one is 0, which means I can purposely actually tailor individual instance values for copies of the same active object. And that's amazing because it allows us to automate, well, not to automate, but it makes programming a lot of the identification of duplicate objects a lot easier, because now we don't need to have like a loop to give some kind of alterable value this information at the start of a frame. Instead, we can just either hard code that in ourselves or have this value that's just a part of it. So again, really fantastic addition by Clickteam. I have to give them props for that. I'm really excited to make use of it in the future Heartwell's development. Similarly, they added Clickteam actually add a cool little distance function in the calculations tab, where you can actually calculate the distance from between 2 points for 2 different active objects, and that saves so much in terms of that greatly simplifies distance checks between 2 different active objects. Because before, you'd have to compare the X value and the Y value and see if it was in a different range. Now you can just say, hey, check a radius, like a circular radius around this point. And maybe set the point to be like, okay, the X coordinate is for this active object, and that Y coordinate is also for this active object. It's so useful. I can definitely see like there being a lot of potential use for it moving forward, especially with like detection of how close Dorothy is to specific enemies. But that is something to consider in the future. For now, we'll focus on creating in the platforms. So let's see here, put that there, duplicate that. All right. Whoops. Uh-oh. That could be a problem. Yeah, what do we have on the map here? Okay, so it's a cobra, not a rattle. Yeah, with a level 4 tile like that, that's definitely not ideal. As it currently stands, we can only go... What's our highest value here? Okay, we can go to level 4, but we do need a lot of floors to actually step that down. What's a good solution to this? It's either we need more space this way, or we need to move things around here. Actually, have we tried what would happen if we went from like a level 4 to a level 1 or vice versa? Let's see what that would do. I have a feeling it won't jive well, but we can at least try it. Oh, I can't even see it. Hold on. We'll say it's those corners right there. Yep, I thought so. Dorothy's moving very, very, very fast right now. Okay. How to restructure this section. Alright, so the idea is to have a running section followed by some cobras. Or some rattlesnakes, sorry. Rattlesnakes, then cobra. Part of me honestly wants like a drop-down section here to start the player out. What would that look like? Alright, chat, looks like we're doing some editing. Which is bound to happen in scenarios like this. Doesn't quite work. You need a little bit more space. Alright. I vote for condensing this section a little bit. We should have everything down by, I'd say, 2 blocks. That should be plenty of space. have to get some stairs. That should be sufficient space. Okay. And then let's just adjust this so it can be brought into the editor again. There we go. Where's image? Go into graphic scale. Pull up our new. Let's see. Yep. Pull that open. Okay. Or what is that? Okay. Now if that's all there, we can move things around. Over here. Okay. That'll work. Mm-hmm. Alrighty. Let's just move that over there. Okay, there we go. All right, that's that section. Yep. Moving over here. Alright, chat. I think this will be the spot for our first break, so don't go anywhere, guys. I will be right back. Alright, chat. Welcome back, everybody. Copper Nicholson asks, have I seen the new My Hero Academia? If you mean the new season, no, I have not seen the new season, Copper Nicholson. Though I do remember enjoying that show a while back. I just got busy with life. And then other shows popped up and it just kind of fell to the wayside. At least from my experience. Like, I definitely need to get caught up with My Hero Academia. Yeah. So you don't think the pro heroes can be considered heroes anymore? They have a huge. I wouldn't know. I would not know Copper Nicholson. Yeah, I'll take your word for it, Copper Nicholson. Copper Nicholson, that is, whether you liked it or not, that, okay, I should say that. Copper Nicholson, unfortunately, that is a subject that isn't anything new, sadly. Like, that has been going on for centuries. So, I don't see what the issue is with an anime having violence hints in that effect. I mean, that does fit the genre. What's the term? Shonen anime? Yeah, shonen anime. My Hero Academia is a shonen anime. Combat most certainly would fall into that that genre. Wait a minute, what am I doing? Stop. I just realized, like, this whole section could save a lot on resources. Alright. But yeah, how goes the workout, by the way, Copper Nicholson? That should be a level 3 tile. Move up there, move up there. Have I ever seen The Boys on Amazon Prime? I have not, Copper Nicholson. I have not. I see. Okay. Alright. I need to test something. What I'm curious about is does this cause any sort of problems? Okay, so I'm walking up. The wall's right there. Seems to be okay. Okay. But yeah, there we go. We move that over here. There we go. We'll pick up with this in a second. Let's shift gears to up here. Oh, actually, Copper Nicholson, if you're still there, I am curious. So, when you and your brother play Fortnite together, like, what's the... Do you guys, like, have any sort of strategy you tend to go with, or specific playstyles you have? Since I remember, at least in some multiplayer games I used to play, hey, it was interesting to develop sort of your own unique playstyle and see how that fit in, like, to the broader meta for the game. Alright. Wow, we're going to need a lot of tiles here. Okay, one moment. Go with 10 by 2 and see if we can't make that work out here. Oop. 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 Alrighty. Move that over there. It's most of that section. I think that covers that section. Let's move on to this area down here. We are down there, chat, so there's actually only a couple more rooms left in this lower floor. In terms of just collision mapping. For those wondering why am I grabbing so many tiles, it's because this section's collision has a lot of similarities, much like a big puzzle piece. Ta-da! It makes sense. They're both bathrooms. They would follow a somewhat similar layout. Alrighty. There we go in that section. Now for this cafeteria area, all we really, or mess hall rather, all we need are these level 1 tiles. Everything else isn't as particularly important. Just the section was designed to be more flat by nature. Yep. Go. This over here. There's nothing there.
Remember all the happy times we had?
Definitely getting there. We need a level 4 tile, wall tile there.
Remember all the happy times we had?
one thing that does kind of amaze me, chat, is now that we're actually building the levels, well, I'm building the areas of the tutorial dungeon, it makes me excited about the potential for future areas in Heartwell to be even more optimized for this. Since, you know, prior to designing the tutorial dungeon, and actually building it, I had no idea just how spacing things out a little bit more could help save on tiles simply by having, like, the bottom floors be at 4-0, so to speak. That saves, like, areas like this save a lot on tile space because we aren't actually using active objects to represent platforming segments. So, with the design of future tutorial dungeons, that is something I'm going to try try to keep in mind, try to be more mindful of, since that'll make not only building this go a lot faster, but also improve performance in future areas. That being said, this section will be certainly a good test to see just how what kind of performance we can get out of an area like this that's only semi-optimized. Alright, chat, almost there with the collision mapping for this lower floor anyway. Named very, very close. We're so close. We're so close. finishing touches down here, and that should just about do it. Okay. Chat. I think we have it. I think we have it. The entire lower floor. Collision mapped. You know what that means, right, chat? It's time to do some testing. Basically what we're going to do, chat, is walk through the center and right sides of this lower section of the tutorial dungeon and make sure and try to see if there's any shenanigans going on, so to speak. So I think we can. What we should do is activate. Make sure everything's visible at the start, just so it's more easily to pick up if like a section is missing something. Alright, let's take a look. I mean, obviously minus this section. This section obviously gets added in last. Since in order to test this area, I have to be able to walk up this way. Right, so we'll want to move towards the middle area. So far, so good. Oh, that was interesting. As also flown across that so quickly it didn't require a jump. Why is that a... What? Hold on. Why do I have a 3 up there? That doesn't make any sense. That should be a 4 tile. Yeah, okay, that needs to be adjusted, but I'm not going back out quite yet. Just because it'll take a little bit to get back to this section. Okay. Go through here. Seems to make sense so far. Yep, we tested that section previously, but we'll get back up there. Okay, so I can't just cheese my way up there, that's good. So cool, chat. I mean, to me, this might, to you guys, this might seem like you're just walking through an area, but to me, this is like starting to bring to life what I've been imagining for months now. Like, as Kronk would say from the Emperor's New Groove, oh yeah, it's all coming together. The fact that that's all seamless is good too. I did. Oh, whoops! I walked down there. I do wonder if there might be some cheese here. Not much of cheese, because this looks like to be a very hard jump to make. But I'm curious if like I sprint jumped, will I be able to? Oh, almost actually. This is just more for my own curiosity. So I like walk to the edge here and then. It might be makeable, but if it is makeable, it's very, very difficult. Which I'm fine with. Like, if it, I don't see the need to like push that back one for this section. Like, if someone's actually able to make that jump, they have all the power to them. That's not an easy jump. We're back here now, which is good. Yep, that all made sense. We'll go down there in a section, in a second chat, but I do want to check some of these other sections. Oh, right. Okay, this makes sense so far. So far, so good. I do want to test that too, but we can do that on the way back. Let's over to that left section. Pretty easy jump there. Weird happen here? No, it all seems pretty normal. Okay. Okay. Looking good. Let's test this section again. Specifically right there. Okay. Seems to be working as intended. Alright. That's the center section. Let's move on to the right section. Okay, so one area of concern might be right here. Okay. Seems to work. Like, I'm legitimately trying to slide to that bomb right. It doesn't seem to be doing anything, so that's good. Okay, but let's take a look. So far, so good. Good. Okay. Might want to add 4 tiles there just because we are standing at that elevation. Okay. Let's check up here real quick. That is interesting. Okay. Oh dear. Well, that needs to be looked into. I don't know what might have caused that. Did I use the... I think I used the wrong elevation for tiles. Alright, well we have a couple of things to adjust. Yep, that's definitely the wrong elevation. That's why it's important to test these things, chat. Hey, Dreadcore, thanks for dropping by. How's it going? You want to show up earlier for hey, no worries, dude, no worries. And I did start about 15 minutes late. The stream just says I was running a bit late. But I made sure to post about that in the stream updates as on the Discord as I usually do. When I have access, of course. Yeah, welcome, Dreadcore. So, we're actually putting the finishing touches on the collision here at the moment. I was rather productive at work. Glad to hear. Glad to hear. Do tell, Record. Do tell. What made it productive? Do a lot of research. So from yours, fits your computer yesterday and update your operating system. Nice, nice. Computer functioning more smoothly now. So, awesome. I'm glad to hear that, Record. It's nice when a PC is running a lot better. So what we're doing here, chat, is just making some final adjustments for the collision. Otherwise, if you see here, like this whole middle and right section had barely anything done with it, where now that's all there. And I'm just like doing some testing and trying to make sure that we aren't missing anything. So there's little things like right here where a tile should have been at a higher elevation. That's light to see from the previous testing. So for those who wonder why I'm so meticulous with how I test things and why I check every room, it's for reasons like that, or like what we just saw here. I put the wrong elevation tile here, and that would have led to some very strange occurrences for the player, like getting stuck in a wall, and that's not good. So better to test it and catch it now, and that is to try and have someone report it as a bug later down the line. And but otherwise, I'm very, very excited because with collision mapping going well, that means that the next order of business would actually be to place enemy types. Once we start placing enemy types in these sections, chat, the dungeon's going to get a lot more lively, so to speak. So instead of us just being like these little platforming segments, suddenly we'll actually be able to feel what the challenge is like, especially since all this testing is occurring at essentially stat level 1 and weapons level player level 0 and weapon level 0s. So that'll make testing a lot more fun. And also probably a good challenge, considering the fact that navigating through this area without considering how navigating, what I was saying is navigating through this area without really leveling yourselves up and having to do it kind of in reverse certainly will make for some interesting testing. Yeah, still there, Greco? Oh, nice. Glad to see you're still here. Following your test play, sounds good. So one thing I was bringing up earlier, Greco, is that after actually starting to build the tutorial dungeon, I'm seeing so many ways that I could, for future dungeon design, like optimize it to be more like sections like this up here in the top right. So like make it to basically still have platforming segments, but minimizing the amount of tiles that are necessary to create the section. So if this were at even one higher elevation, this entire bottom floor would need to have tiles, and that would be less optimized than having this be the ground floor, so to speak. So this makes me excited for future dungeons, because as long as I create like a set of rules about certain things, like, okay, how tall does a hallway need to be in order to have stairs to step up to a certain elevation, for example, or general principles like that, basically would improve performance while having increasingly more complex environments. So yeah, reducing the total length of the platform section without reducing the total area of the section. So yes and no. It's not necessarily reducing the length of this section. If anything, Trekor, it more has to do with spacing of sections. So previously when I designed this, I jammed, I mean, to be fair, sections are still jammed together because I like that. It kind of makes me think of the Souls-like level design. But it was jammed so pat together that I needed elevation tiles going all the way up to like 8 or 9. And that also led to sections where it's like, oh, you're at a slightly higher elevation. Well, now this giant, like, you know, 20 by 20 space is going to need at least some active objects just to represent the different tiles. Like, imagine this section, like all this lower section needed tiles. To me, that would be very unoptimized. So it's really more so taking into account when designing these sections. Hey, it's good to have them close together, but give yourself enough space, or like these little hallway sections or column sections like this, where you have enough space to use your stair step function essentially to remove how many active objects you actually need. Because like, imagine, like, the way this was designed, this entire hallway could have had 3 tiles, like level 3 tiles. I just imagine like the absolute waste of processing power that would be, you know? Because there's no enemies in this section, it's just a connecting path. And that's where things like stair tiles come into play. Because the fewer tiles we use, the more optimized this is to play. Anywho, rant about that over, makes me super excited because, again, with a more optimized section, that would allow us to more easily that would allow us to actually have even larger environments than this without really compromising performance. So that'll definitely be something fun to think about moving forward. I'll also mention, since you're here, Repcore, ignore that. That was just rain. Anyway, I'll also mention that off stream, I have been working on the boss battles for the demo, and the first boss that I was working on only has one more attack pattern for me to program, and then I'll be able to actually test it out. I'm really excited for that, because I'm not sure if I made it abundantly clear before chat, but boss battles are probably my favorite thing about video games, or like, well, okay, the thing is, Vector, this is not something you see on a dev stream, this is something you see when you actually play the demo, but boss battles are easily my favorite parts of video games. Like, I enjoy the challenge of the unique opponent that you're trying to overcome. And granted, the demo is only containing the 2 tutorial bosses, so obviously they have to be the easiest bosses in the game. But still, I really take pride in my boss design, and I care about it a lot. Because I can definitely, like, for me, it's extremely easy to tell when a game's bosses either are non-existent or an afterthought. Drekor says, used to not like boss fights very much in the past when all you played was like Mario stuff, but after playing games where the boss fights are the highlights, like Dark Souls, Crossroads, Hollow Knight, I'm guessing you kind of warmed up to boss fights. Is that it, Drekor? Now you love boss fights. Exactly. Hey, Dopper. So, and the thing is, like, I was that way from, like, a young age, and I have to credit Assisted Video Games, Sonic the Hedgehog 3, and Knuckles for that, because Sonic 3 and Knuckles has so many boss fights, and I mean, and they're each unique. So, for context, Sonic 3 and Knuckles has 13 zones, so that's the Sonic equivalent of a level. But each zone has two acts, so that's 2 different levels within the level. So Act 1 and Act 2. And at the end of nearly every single act is a unique boss battle. Rektor says, are you alone thinking that Zelda 3 boss fights are rather mad? I have not played Zelda 3, so I would not be able to comment on that. But from what I've seen in, like, Let's Plays of the Wind Waker, for example, the bosses in Zelda games, at least the more 3D Zelda games, seem to be more puzzly. Either puzzly or hack and slashy. It's very rare where I see a Zelda boss that's, like, about a heavy skill component like you'd see in Dark Souls. Now, that's not a criticism of Zelda, because Zelda is very much more of like a puzzle exploration Metroidvania style of game than a series, than it is a true to form action RPG combat sort of game. You like LTTP? What's that stand for? Copper Nicholson. Legend of Zelda something. You also felt like the boss battles went from overwhelming to frustrating. Fair enough. A Link to the Past. I see. So, alright, why don't you give me some examples, Crackcore? So, what's a boss that's underwhelming and what's a boss that's frustrating? So while you're typing those up, going back to Sonic 3 and Knuckles, I loved that nearly every stage had a unique boss, and the bosses almost always related, and this was important, the bosses that you'd fight in the stages almost always related to the gameplay mechanics that were a part of that stage. And what made that so cool is that the bosses were essentially like your sort of mini quiz or mini test, if you will, to the level. And that's how I think, in general, how bosses should be. They should really be a challenge for the player to test what they've learned up to that point, and sometimes even throw a wrench in things. It's to see if the player is able to adapt based off where they were at in the game. So what you're saying, Rekor, is most bosses before the Adnim fight are underwhelming, then Moldorm is frustrating, then Mothula is dumb. Okay. Is Adnim like a example of like a very well-designed boss, or is Adnim like a frustrating boss, Rekor? Also, I'm thinking that the platforming section seems to be working right now, so that's good. Adam's alright, but it's a trivial. Fair enough. Fair enough. So, and the other thing Wild Eye didn't stand is pretty good, though. Fair. The other thing about the Sonata 3 bosses is they really were, I think, fairly skill-based, because if you have no idea how to handle a particular Sonata 3 boss, you would, you know, get pummeled over and over again until you figure it out. But once you know what to do for a certain boss, you can try to position yourself in such a way to bounce multiple times in a row against the boss, because most bosses take 8 hits to destroy in Sonata 3 Knuckles. And figuring out how to optimize dealing damage without getting hit was a lot of the fun of the skill gap in those boss battles, even though it was a platformer. And because there were so many different variations, hence it made it super engaging to fight each unique boss. And that's why whenever I see games like either have almost no bosses at all, there were tons of games like that, and I tend to find disappointing, or like maybe a handful of bosses but they're all pretty generic and not particularly inspiring beyond just having maybe a little extra HP, or maybe he just deal a little more damage. TLDR, boss battles are important. They're one of my favorite parts of games. And I very much look forward to designing Heartwell's bosses, since I think those would be by far the most memorable gameplay segments in terms of just segments that require skill, as opposed to, I mean, I'm sure the story will be memorable as well. It's just that, to me, at least, when you're playing a game, you can say a game has an amazing story, but if it also has amazing gameplay that works in tandem with the story, I think that makes it even better, personally. Yes, really, so hope so. I do my best, director. Like, I'm really excited. I'll be very curious to see what the feedback is for the tutorial bosses, because they are certainly I'll describe this without being spoilery. They're meant to be basic because they are the tutorial bosses, but at the same time, so if anything, one of my major concerns is, are they going to be too easy? And that's something I'll be testing for myself as I test build them, but it could certainly go the other way. I don't want to make them so hard that it just makes people not want to play the game, but I don't want to make them so easy that even like the Asylum Demon seems seems harder by comparison. In fact, when I was writing my notes for the 2 ways that you can always deliberately challenge yourself, true by using, well, the thing is, Director, everyone starts with the worst weapons well, not the worst weapons in the game, just the everyone starts with their fists and rocks, and you can't get any other weapons until you actually defeat a boss. So you're just basically stuck with your fists and your rocks. So if you want to challenge yourself, Director, for these bosses, the thing you would just do is not level up anything. So no melee level ups, no range level ups, no player stat level ups. That would be the challenge. So I have in my notes, once I finish programming that boss's attack pattern, last attack pattern, is to set an HP amount and then test myself to see, 1, how difficult I feel it is, but 2, how long it takes me to actually beat the boss in a couple of different scenarios. With the main scenarios being, we'll call it factory 0, or like absolute 0, which means no leveling up whatsoever, since that would be more like your challenge setup. No leveling up, and like and only the default weapons. Then to test. Then the next test would be to try and estimate how much XP a player would have earned if they succeeded at every section and defeated a decent portion of the enemies. And that way I could estimate, okay, how many level ups would they have for their weapons and for their stats, and I would just, for testing purposes, throw all those levels purely into anything that would increase damage, just to see how it plays like that. And that's how I would essentially be trying to categorize how the difficulty. So difficulty based off, how many times I die, and what the expectation is there, but also as to how long it takes to actually beat the boss. Because if the boss is really easy but takes an absurdly long time to beat, that's not super fun. And conversely, if the boss is super hard, but they have they're too easy to defeat because they have very little health, then that's not as much fun either. So it's like trying to find that perfect balance, if you will. You feel like that idea works. Which idea, Director? The different test stages. When working on a game on our own, one of the hardest things to do is balance difficulty. True, and that's where feedback from the demo will come into play. Because you're, as a developer, you play your game so much, it's going to feel easier for you naturally than someone who's playing it for the first time. You think we just accept that the difficulty curve is not going to be perfect while still trying to get as close to perfect as possible. So that's the thing, Brockor. I don't think I agree with the statement you can't make the difficulty curve. Well, the difficulty you can't really estimate until you get playtesting. But I do think it's possible to design a difficulty curve appropriately. And you might say, how do you know this, Antomicx? Well, because the second game I ever made was actually like a boss rushing platformer, and pretty much anyone, even though like to me the game was easier than people who just played it because not everyone's as good at like platforming bosses. Pretty much unanimously, people who play the game said that the difficulty of the bosses seemed to escalate in a way that made sense. So like earlier bosses were generally easier than later bosses, and it felt like the difficulty ramped up at an appropriate pace. Exactly, and that's because I really cared about the design of each boss and thinking, okay, where does this fall on the difficulty spectrum and why? So generally speaking, there are a couple of different levers you can pull to adjust difficulty of a boss. One is health, so obviously a boss with more health is going to take longer to defeat. A boss with less health is going to take less time to defeat. Two is number of attacks, and complexity of attacks and the damage dealt by said attacks. So in that game that I designed previously, every boss's attack would just deal quote-unquote 1 damage, so damage wasn't really a factor there. But the complexity of the attack and like how difficult it is to avoid or anticipate, like those are things you have to take into account when designing a boss. And generally speaking, bosses with more attack patterns and with attack patterns that are more difficult to adapt to are going to be harder bosses, all things considered. So, and you can like even go into the Souls-like games and if you pay super close attention to attack patterns, you can really pick up on like, okay, from a design standpoint, this boss should be easy, and from a design standpoint, this boss should be harder than this one. So, what I would encourage any developer to do that is trying to figure out how to balance boss difficulty ramping. If you see a boss that you like at a certain point in the game, like for example, I think Asylum Demon is like one of the most perfect tutorial bosses. Analyze every attack pattern and like how long those attack patterns last, how much damage they do, things like that. Like if you look at Asylum Demon, I think you could really say it maybe has 4 attacks, certainly has some variations, but really it can swing in front of it, it can do a lunging dive attack, it can fly into the air and stomp it and land on the ground for an attack. And then it can try to hit near itself in a curved fashion, either left or right, just to try and convince the player to essentially back off. And that's really all it can do. Yeah, exactly, Graptor, exactly. So, and the thing is, that is something you can actually measure. So even if 2 bosses do the same general, like, forward swipe thing, one boss's forward swipe animation might be a lot faster than the other boss's, and that would make the former boss more difficult, How are things we need to pay attention to at the same time? Yep. And how hard to predict is an attack trajectory, also true. Also true. Oh, and since we're on, I know I'm going on to a bit of a development tangent, but I'm feeling happy because we've got all the collision here, so I feel like it's a good time to actually discuss a little bit of just development stuff. Well, yeah, but you're right, Brecor. Those are all things you can measure and discuss to make it, to try and estimate the difficulty of a particular boss. Yep, so collision's all good. Now it's time to bring in some enemies. I think we'll actually start in the central well, since I think that'll be a little bit easier for testing purposes. So you might be saying, what are we going to do here? Essentially, we are going to start placing enemies throughout the areas based off what we have so far in the in the tile map editor. Yep, oh, the big arrows. So Director, I'm not sure if you saw this before, but this is how we saved on tile mapping for this well section. Essentially reusing different walls in different areas. But I am very, very excited for this. Does this mean that was like that? It's a huge accomplishment getting the collision here. So the platforming's here now. It's totally legit to be happy about managing to get some stuff to work. Indeed, indeed. And like you all saw it, like it took a while to get some of these like higher slopes to work. But once it starts working, all of a sudden it's like, now we have a fun play space and we can do stuff with it. Speaking of doing stuff with it, it's time to start making some, start doing some enemy placements. So what I'll do for that is bring these over here. All right. So what I'm really curious to see, chat, is whether or not this is going to cause lag of some kind. Especially when we start placing a lot of enemies down. So if you'll notice, if I pull up, yeah, even as true from a player's perspective, very true. So notice, right now, this feels fine. You know, perfectly normal. Happy little Dorothy, moving through the scary tutorial dungeon. But I'm curious to see, like, especially as we start adding a lot of rattles and cobras, if that's going to affect performance in any negative light. I really hope not, because if it does, then that could involve some redesigning of these very beautifully very beautifully convoluted levels. I would really love to keep the mashed together nature of these levels intact if we can. But I also recognize from a performance perspective, if performance completely tanks, that might be necessary. So this will be very much the test case. But as I was saying, if you want to know what's one of my biggest pet peeves with game design beyond bad tutorials, so that's, you know, pretty much anyone who's been on my streams know I despise bad tutorials. Another one of my biggest pet peeves is what I would call the underwhelming final boss. Or, in some cases, so what do I mean by that? So, in my view, a final boss should be like sort of your final test for a game, if you will. Your final exam. Yeah, bad tutorials are bad, but I would gladly take a bad tutorial over for an underwhelming final boss. And I'll explain why. So, with the final boss, it's supposed to be like your big finale, your big hurrah. It's your time to really test the player on everything they've learned up to that point. So to me, a really satisfying final boss will be like that ultimate final test for the player. Like, have they truly mastered the systems? And let's find out. An underwhelming final boss either, one, does not adequately test the player's skills that they developed up to that point, or two, does test the player's skills up to that point, but the way it's tested feels underwhelming compared to what the player did before said boss. So in the former case, I think the easiest example is pretty much any like AAA title single player game where the final boss isn't actually a boss, it's just like a quick time event. Like, when I see that, I despise that on an emotional level. Especially when the game has a fun combat system. Like, I think of, you want some examples of quick time event final bosses in games that actually have fun combat. The, what's the name of that game? What's the name of the zombies game with all the parkour elements? Dying Light, that's right. In the base game of Dying Light, the final boss is a quick time event. And that's so incredibly disappointing because in the middle of the game, there is actually a boss fight against this giant demolisher zombie in like a construction in area arena that's super, tough and satisfying. And it's like clearly the developers know how to make a fun boss battle using their combat system, and yet for the final section of the game, they don't make a final boss. I'm just like, what? It's like, you have the means, use them, you know? And the sad thing is, Dying Light is not an outlier here. Like, what was that name? Shadow of Mordor has the same problem. When you finally reach Sauron, it's a quick time event. I don't get it. Like, there's no final boss. Like, there's a little section where you're supposed to fight, quote unquote, the Hand of Sauron, which is just 5 generic mini bosses, but that's, that feels more like the gauntlet you'd see up to a final boss, not the final boss. Yeah, it's like, why? Exactly. It's like, what are you doing? Was this an afterthought? So yeah, rest assured, it's super dumb. I agree. You wanna know an example of how to actually use a quick time events during a final boss? Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance. That game has an actual final boss, and the quick time events are just meant to inject a bit of uncertainty in the middle of the boss battle, but there's still the combat aspect to it. So it's like, Metal Gear Rising's final boss is so excellent because it beautifully intermits his quick time events with action RPG combat, and it just happens so seamlessly. And like the final boss, yeah, it's like, exactly, like that is the one example I can think of where it's like, how do you do quick time events right in a final boss without sacrificing the gameplay? That just Senator Armstrong is an amazing final boss. Like, take notes. But what was I saying? Oh yeah. So quick time events are examples of disappointments in that department, but even beyond that, you can still find situations where the final bosses are disappointing, even if they use the game's mechanics. Take, for example, Sonic CD. So remember how I was praising Sonic 3's final bosses, Sonic 3's bosses earlier? I cannot say the same for Sonic CD. Sonic CD's most Sonic CD's bosses, barring the chase with Metal Sonic, I think that's actually pretty good. But barring that chase, pretty much all of Sonic CD's bosses are highly experimental, but just seem rather silly. And nowhere is that more apparent than the quote-unquote final boss of Sonic CD, where Robotnik, mind you, this is the Robotnik that it was capable of making Metal Sonic and Big Arms, which are amazing bosses in their own right. That same Robotnik decides to just get into like this little orb with 4 little tiles that rotate around him, and he just moves left to right on the screen, then slowly releases the tiles to give you an opening to actually hit him. And I'm just like, huh? That doesn't feel like a final boss to me. Like, when I think of a final Robotnik boss, I want to see, like, a Death Aid robot, or like a really epic Metal Sonic fight, or Big Arms, or something to that effect, or like an Egg Emperor, not silly orb that rotates things around, very easy to dodge, feels like it should just be a mid-boss. Like, if you want to see a disappointing final boss, just look up on YouTube Sonic CD final boss, and you will see what I'm talking about, even if you've never played a Sonic game. It's like, why? Like, how is that the final boss? Anyway, Yeah, it makes you wonder. Why are underlying final bosses so common? That's, you know, a fair point. I think I have a couple of theories for that. The main theory I would say is development / release crunch. So video games usually are not like movies. Video games are not always developed in sequence. So what that means is just because a level is like level 2 doesn't mean it was the second level that was made. In all likelihood, things were a bit out of order. Or budget, perhaps. I think it's kind of a mix of both, like running out of time and budget. But with games, though, while it is true that you can develop things in different orders in the middle, generally speaking, later game bosses or areas should be designed later. For the sole reason that you have to build off of the foundation you have from earlier in the game. And nowhere is that more apparent than with the final boss, because the final boss, like I said before, a good final boss will be a test of what the player has learned up to that point. Like a final exam, if you will. And because of that, that means everything before it, if it's going to be a final boss worth of snuff, has to at least have been outlined in order to even begin to fathom what the final boss should be. With that in mind, if yeah, it's like Gwyn doesn't really feel like a final exam. Now Crossbow on the other hand, yeah, I was about to say, like, so what happens is, yeah, it's after Grekor. So I think in terms of just from a gameplay design perspective, the final boss of the base name of Crosscode is amazing. Like, it definitely tests everything the player learned up to that point. Like, I think from that perspective, it's awesome. It's like top tier. But I also agree that Crosscode's final boss isn't really the narrative peak, which means to me that's just missed potential. I love it. Like, I really feel like based off the narrative, Shizuko should have been the final boss. I've had that rant before. I'm sure you've all heard me go on that rant, but Shizuko really felt like the major foil to Leia throughout most of the game, and I feel like she should have. Yeah, the Burb Gods are also amazing. And to be fair, for the Crosscode MMO, like Cross Worlds, the Burb Gods are definitely a fitting final boss. But at the same time, in the Crosscode DLC, the Burb Gods are not the final boss of the game. It's, you know, the T-posing, the T-posing Evotar that we have to fight afterwards. And it's so underwhelming. I mean, it's a fine boss, but it's underwhelming compared to the Burb Gods, you know? It's the same problem. It's like, the Burb Gods were clearly the narrative peak for Crossworlds, so why isn't that the true last fight of the game, you know? Exactly. What I think they should have done, personally, like, if I were to design... And now I'm feeling wrong, fair enough. Well, let's actually start to play some enemies now that I'm had a bit of a time to rant. Actually, you know what? I should take a quick break, so don't go, guys. I will be right back. Alrighty, chat. Welcome back, everybody. So what I'm going to do is start to place enemies kind of going from like the beginning outward. And that it all starts with a simple rattlesnake that we will place right. I think with the collisions we can just place these anywhere as long as we make sure there's enough for however many snacks we have. No. Okay. Back from getting some more water, Breckwork. Yeah, there's a Cabrattle up there. And Cabrattle in the hallway. Oh, you're right. Yes, sorry to disrupt it. No worries, no worries. So, if I were to redesign we'll say the pacing of the DLC narrative for Crosscode, the only change I would really do is just switch the placement of the return to Vermilion Wasteland and the big final dungeon of Crossworlds. And I actually think it would be a fairly reasonable switch to do because in, like, I think it was chapter 12 or 13, you have that scene where Citron finally shows his true colors, so to speak. So, in that scene, I think that would have been the prime opportunity to you know, shortly after that, you can make the argument like, dang, we really gotta help Citron out, let's go back to Vermilion Wasteland and investigate this. Yeah, so return to Vermilion Wasteland, help Citron, and then after that, everyone goes to the final dungeon. Yeah, not only to celebrate, but I think it'd be more than just a celebration. It'd be kind of sort of like a, hey, we've been through some stuff. We need to see that we can still be around each other. And what better way than this final dungeon? You know, it can be, it's like this is the last thing they made for Crossworlds. Let's finish this off as friends. You know, let's finish this off as friends. That kind of thing, and that could make it feel like that final boss feel like, you know, overcoming everything we've been through up to that point. Made it super duper satisfying. Yeah, that would have been adorable. Now, as for you might ask the question, okay, Antomicx, so you love it when like final bosses are both the final test gameplay wise and the narrative peak. What would Heartwell's final boss look like? I understand that I still have a lot of like the details. There's still plenty of details I need to develop for like everything between the beginning and the end of the game. But rest assured though that I am very much designing the final boss, both from a gameplay perspective and a narrative perspective, to be the finale. And it will absolutely be the narrative peak of the story, I would say, or at least the climax, if you will, the true final struggle, much like how you know, in all the Zelda games, like the fight against Ganon is the final struggle, and rightly so, right? Like, you wouldn't want any other way, I wouldn't think. So Heartwell's final boss will absolutely be he'd be like that in that sense. So, no, just like how, like, when I say, like, I wish Shizuka was the final boss of the base standard crosscode, I'm definitely keeping that perspective in mind as I'm developing, you know, ramping up to what Heartwell's final boss would be. Alright, let's move the rattlesnake over here. Into the middle. Happy little snack. Yes, happy little corner. Let's make sure this all works out. Okay, so I see a snack. Look at that, chat. Look at that. Snack. But also, let's test up here with the rattles. Yep, there's a corral. Hey, Copper, welcome home. You know, the fact that I can actually see this section from here means I could probably put the rattle up there, and it would be fine. But let's make sure that the rattle's, okay, yep, it definitely sees us. Ow. Actually, no, I think it'd be fine to leave it there, because I want the player to see it and understand they have to get closer to it. You know, and this is supposed to be a very easy section, much like the... You know, the Dark Souls, like, hallway with the arrows and such. And now it's just that cabral, so obviously we can't hit it from down here, but we can hit this cabral. I'm just realizing now, the stamina's still recharging. That's going to be something the player will have to take into account, which I love. Now we start to combine the mechanics. Perfect. This is going exactly as planned. The player will have to manage their stamina as they avoid the cabral. Or, I mean, they can always just fight back, you know? That's part of the fun. This is amazing. This is exactly as I intended. Yes! The choices! The choices! Or, sorry, the choices. I think the idea here, Chaz, that if you want, you could easily, you know, try to get over here. I'm realizing that should be a 3. I need to adjust that. Oh dear. Okay. That was scary. I was saying choice. Yes, very excellent choice indeed. Oh, look at our health. Our health is so low. I mean, it was designed like that. Choice is just a very silly way of saying choice that I hear Carl say it and say sometimes, and I enjoy it because it's a very, very silly meme. Beware the choice. Regardless, I'm glad to see that at least that section seems to be working out. Hey, Spot-Tip, thanks for dropping by. Thanks for the look, really appreciate it. Anyway, the fact that that seems to work well has me excited for these other areas. Because very much the idea with that section is to, of course, test the players, like combining the platforming skills and their combat skills at that point. Like, you could fight the cabral here, but that floor tile probably isn't like the easiest spot to do it at. Whereas over here, maybe a little better. As you get closer, it gets easier and easier. That's the idea. But it's also riskier because you have to manage your stamina carefully. I think the fact, chat, that at base stamina, the fact that right here, you can easily run out of stamina right here where the cabral's there, it would be a good teaching moment for the player because it shows the player like, hey, you gotta pay attention to your stamina, because if you don't, you're just going to get clobbered. Like, I think that's a good teaching moment right there. So show the player like sometimes just taking a little bit of a breather could actually be a good idea depending on what the situation is. So let's, on that note, do I have any sections with with cobras that are super complicated? I do not. Sorry. So, those who are wondering, no, you're not, Smutjep. And no, it wasn't them, Copper Nicholson. Like I was saying, it's just some people I knew from when I was younger. Those weren't my brothers. But regardless, why I was laughing is because every area here with the Cobras has no corners, which means I don't actually have to program any tailored pathfinding here. It's just basic stuff for the Cobras here. So that'll actually make inputting the Cobras much easier here. The lower section has a lot of twisty paths that'll make that a bit more interesting. But hey, Spud. So in case you're wondering what we're doing, we've finished collision mapping, and we're finally starting to bring some enemies into this dungeon. So that's gonna be fun. I'm really curious to see if this idea I have here is going to add anything. Is these tunnels here where they have a lot of rattlesnakes that having the most concern for performance? Because I've seen like one or two here and there, you know, no big deal, but like a bunch just like jammed packed into one section. That is something I'll need to be careful of. All right. Supposedly we need like 10 in that area. All right. Let's place our snacks. So the idea of this section is to basically alternate the snacks so that the player has to try and maneuver around them. Either that or take them, you know, figure out how to deal with them individually. Something about something potatoes, but yep. You're the one who's gonna destroy things. Are you saying you're Milliam Smutjep? Are you secretly Milliam Smutjep? I swear. I swear. Alright, let's try that. See how that turns out. Okay, performance so far so good. I'm realizing we are extremely low on health, so let's, for testing purposes. So obviously I can't attack them from this height. Oh, it's chaos! It's chaos! It's chaos! Yes! I mean, I've got to adjust the spacing because this is very vicious. Ow! Ow! Yeah, there's gotta be a better way to space these out. Let's see. Maybe push them a bit closer to the wall. You can, Grekor, and that is a tactic. I do want that to be a tactic. Yeah, jump up, hit jump down. This is more so as... But again, the player has to think that through, you know? I definitely need to adjust the spacing so the player can actually run through this if they know what they're doing. Okay. Gotta adjust that. Okay. Note to self, you can't put a rattlesnake that close to a corner or else it'll just get the player stuck. That's no fun. Actually, what's gonna happen if I try to... Also, that could be deliberate, but... I got stuck. Okay. So we can't have the rattlesnakes right up against like a slope like that. Good to know. Good to know. Honestly, we could just place them in the middle like this. Milliam's a changeling? What? Out here. Ow. We're getting absolutely destroyed by the tunnel. I like that we're getting destroyed by the tunnel, but I want to make sure it's not because we're getting stuck on things. There has to be a path for the player to actually get through here. So... Ow! We're getting annihilated. Okay, move this closer over here. Because the player clearly can walk above there. Let's try something like that. Actually, I do need a test to make sure that the player doesn't get stuck if they get like to that one. Okay. Okay, good. It does. It's smart enough to at least yeet us into... I say this as I get completely clobbered by these things. You think it'd be perfect to just remove that last one? You mean this one up here? Just so the player has like pour quad, Rector. Oh dear. Well that's funny. The anti-stuck is working to the player's favor there. I think we have too high of a concentration of rattlesnake here, so we'll move some of these to the one. To the other ones. The concentration of rattlesnake is too high, so we will adjust accordingly. Like, the idea here, chat, is to give the player very little room to breathe. Like, not impossible, but definitely little room to breathe to make them, like, especially the new player, they're panicking, they're trying to figure this out so that they can calmly, so that they start to learn how to calmly assess things before they jump right into it. Yeah, the position of this rattlesnake is definitely not ideal. We can put that one over here. Let's try this layout. Anyone watch our turns? Perfect! There we go, chat. Look at that! Look at that! Little rattlesnake tunnel. So for people who actually know what they're doing, you know, just a nice, calm, happy little walk. This is fine, you know. This is absolutely fine. Nothing to see here. I find that kind of amusing, actually. Just walk the snatch. Walk the snatch. Yes, now it is perfect. So like people who maintain their calm, this isn't nearly as scary as it looks. But people who aren't, they're just going to like get stuck in places. I wonder, chat, if I were to press the rattlesnake, I'd like for this section to have a little bit more depth to it, but I understand why it doesn't because of just the placement of everything. If I'm saying like, okay, yeah, that's what I thought. What do you think, chat? Should I leave this here to give players like a easier opportunity to actually, like, you know, use this as a grinding area? Or do I be evil and put a snack here and require the player to actually hop up and down or level up their weapons enough to actually be able to grind this out? Because trying to let's try to balance this out. The rattlesnakes have a very long yeah. So what you'd have to do is you think a bit of illusion challenge to do. Yeah, that's a fair point. Fair point. So maybe leaving that opening there is actually not a bad idea. Especially considering the way this is currently designed. The player is actually going to have to go through here every time they want to refight one of the bosses, or one of the specific bosses. The other boss is in that general direction. I'm saying the boss for the right side of the dungeon, you'd have to backtrack through here to be like the shortest way to get back there, so we don't want this to be too evil, you know? So like having to hop back up and down like that would definitely be a pain if you're trying to just grind for XP. So, but knowing you need to be able to just walk to this point, and as long as you position yourself correctly to be able to, you know, slowly whittle your way out here, I think that's probably fine. Especially since it's in the middle, so that no matter which direction you're coming from, you have to actually get here. I do find this amusing, though. It's also so satisfying just hearing them all just rattling, you know? It's like, it's kind of terrifying. Like, you hear all the rattles, just lots and lots of rattles. Yeah, I like that. Alright, nope. Don't want to die. And of course, when we run back in, because the respawn mechanics, that one's still gone, but of course we rest. It comes back, as expected. Whee! Alrighty. So, we run this way. It's a happy little stroll past all the snacks. Well, actually, if I try to speedrun this, yeah, trying to run through that's not easy, especially since if you run out of stamina, you in trouble. Then you get stuck and hit, which is actually, that's perfect timing. I mean, look at that, chat. Look at that. If you're trying to sprint through this, that's actually, without leveling up your stamina, that's actually a really bad idea because your stamina will be recovering right there and thus you get hit. I think that's kind of perfect, honestly. It's like, you're looking at the top left corner, it's just barely, you know, just barely, like the perfect amount of, the perfect level of punishment to the player that gets a little too greedy. Regardless, that's that area. Then we have, I think down here on the bottom right's the next section to be interested in. Okay, how do we want to do this? We know that if we sat the snacks too closely together, weird things happen. Actually, what How am I going to get over there? Temporarily making a path here, because without it, we can't actually test that area. Oh, I do need to test that snack over there as well, so... Okay, back to what was intended, and we're dead. You know what's funny about this, chat? Compared to, like, even, like, the hollows in Dark Souls, a rattlesnake might seem like, this can't be in a Souls game. This is too easy. It's a stationary opponent. It can only do a silly little melee slash. Haha, Antomicx, there's no way this is ever going to destroy me. Well, yes, again. Like, it's all about placement. I want people to think, like, okay, it's just a rattlesnake, how bad could it be? And then see, like, this monstrosity that we're about to create over here. And be like, oh, that's how bad it could be. But we have to make that first. I think, keep this snack towards the middle. Alright, how many stacks do I have in here? Oh boy, that's a lot. Let's try duplicating 15 of these and see how that turns out. Oh dear. Da 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 da. Okay, so this is a bit haphazard right now. Actually, I do want to test something. So if I move a snack like right up against the wall, will I get stuck? Or does it not get stuck? Oh, I can walk that. Okay. Okay. It's probably just barely walkable, but that's good to know. Ow. Let's try that. Hello? Gabe? Gabe? We shouldn't be behind this. Don't know why that's doing that. Alright, that's better. Alright. I'm noticing a few frame drops in this area, but I'm not sure if that's just because I'm streaming this at the same time, or if that's something to be concerned about. Look how they all move, chat. It's like looking at like a little wave of snacks. They're like, oop, 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 oop. Anyway, how are we going to do this? Oh dear. Well, that is a very tight gap. We need to open that up a bit. As I say, this is something that she's too many resources. I agree, chat, but at the same time, not sure because there are a lot of things happening here all at once. All right, let's try that. Okay. So can we actually walk now? Okay. Oh, we can't. No! No! Okay, that's, 1 second. What is the... Okay. The snakes. They're vicious. They're very unforgiving. So many snakes. Rattlesnake. Alright. I can't make it through that gap. Ow, ow, ow. Ow. Move that more to the left. Good. Okay, okay, there we go. Now there's a path. Now there's actually a path. Alright. Whoa, 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 whoa. Oh boy. Just hearing all the rattling, it's just like... Like, literally just walking through... Yeah, I'm not sure... Like, even walking through this just feels a bit intimidating just because of all the rattling, you know? It's just like... If you were hearing that, chat, you'd probably be very, in real life, you'd probably be very, very scared about your current situation, because that's a lot of angry rattlesnakes. Here. I do want to make it so there's actually a path here, though, to some extent. I like the start here, because it does have a bit to it. But I'd also like it for it to, like, be like the player has to kind of start with things and not get stuck, or at least learn to jump over things. If they haven't already. Ow. So, what I think we do, Chad, is we put strategic areas where it looks like you should be able to get through, but you just barely can't. And the player has to figure out either what the correct path is, or something to that effect. And so far, this seems to make sense. Definitely want to find a spot to like throw a wrench into it, so the player's like, "Oh, really? I should have like either realized that I couldn't make that gap or something like that." Yeah, we still have more to populate here, so So every snack had its happy little square. It looks something like this. But that's not what we want. We want every snack to be placed precariously, so that the player can't just beeline it to the end without at least a smidgen of thought. We'll need 2 more. I think the first spot that could be a hiccup for the player should be like maybe around here. If the player think they can go this way, but in actuality they can't without jumping, of course. Jumping, obviously makes this a lot easier. And this is supposed to encourage like either strategic jumping or really planning your route carefully. I also think, chat, for the purposes of grinding, there should be somewhere in the middle of this mess where the rattlesnakes can't actually hit the player if they know where to stand. Since that'll, of course, again add to the skill of it and make this, what was once a very scary spot, now seem like a grinding area. Once they get a bit stronger. But to do that, we will need to consider how the player would actually walk through this area. Player got through that. I think they could. Oh, actually, now that I think about it, what if we made like this corner in the bottom left the spot that's like the quote-unquote safe spot? It's like the furthest away from both sections. I think that would be more ideal to the idea here. Oh, the rattling is definitely... I'm going to die. Exactly. That's... When a player sees this monstrosity for the first time, that's what I want them to think. And be like, what the heck is this? It's just like... I thought the rattlesnakes were supposed to be easy. They're not supposed to be a threat. What is this rub? Like, there's so many, you know? It'd be like is the developer for this game insane? And don't answer that. Alright, let's try that. Oh, I think the answer to that is that the developer isn't insane, they just like insane challenges. Yes, the developers of that tower. Yes, perfect. Exactly. All according to plan. You have to understand, chat. I want this to be a game that I want to play, and seeing stuff like this, you know, is part of the fun. Okay. I also forgot that there's this little loop here, which means we can actually start from the beginning here. Alright. Well, let's see how hard this is. That lad. The lad. Okay. Pretty good. I think it's just a fair jump. Ow, ow, ow. We really can't afford to take our time there. We have to take... Yeah, it's evil and fair. This is meant to be evil in a fair way because this is like a challenge section. It's a side section, you know. You're not meant to. This is not on the any of the quote unquote mandatory paths. The idea is that, you know, on this ledge right here is a very valuable reward. So if the players want the valuable reward, they have to earn it by overcoming this monstrosity. Yeah, exactly. Completely doing the option out over there. This is definitely a side path. Alright. Let's try that again. So. Oh, the lag. It's hard. Okay, so we gotta open up that section. I think if we move that snack, it'll be okay. We move you up to the well section. I'm noticing the amount of megabytes in the top left corner here is definitely going up when we go to this area, which makes sense. There's a lot of objects here. Okay, let's try this again. Okay, that's not bad. That's not bad. Not bad. Now let's try the latter half of the session. Okay. Makes sense. So far, makes sense. There's this project. Now! Part of me wants to shift it to the left here just so that the player has to kind of go wiggle their way to the right before getting over there. So... Yeah, clearly in the player an option not to go there. Exactly. Nope. Let's try that. One thing to worry about, however, what would be that, Grekor? Where the dungeon those two gauntlets of snakes are. True. Well, Grekor, both, what we're saying, gauntlets of snakes like this, both of those are optional, 100% optional areas that are for, like, really, really useful items. So, I think that makes sense for them. If they're too early to dungeon, first-time players might get the impression that the game's going to be enemy spam galore. No. So, Grekor, for context, to even get to here, the player would have to go through a pretty significant chunk of the right lower half of the dungeon, and even then, they'd have to purposely choose a side path to get here. Like, this is an optional thingy. Think like, Take like some of the extra rooms you see in some Dark Souls dungeons that are clearly filled with enemies, like places you shouldn't be going into if you're sane, but you can decide to go in there for the shinies, and that's the intent here. Like I said, there'd be a very useful shiny right there, but in order to get the shiny, you need to brave the Gauntlet of Snecks. And it's not just braving the Gauntlet of Snecks from a save point, you have to brave the Gauntlet of Snecks after actually getting to the Gauntlet of Snecks in the first point, so it's supposed to be a little challenge. Okay. No. It's already starting. The chaos. Okay. Now, trying to see. First, I want to test to see if I can actually still wiggle my way to the left here. The lad. Oh, that's actually perfect. I just realized. I mean, I know we're lagging a lot because I'm streaming this, but what's perfect about that chat is that gap right there looks like you should be able to get through it, but it's just ever so slightly too small. You know, just the tiniest bit to, like, catch the player, like, aha, at the very end. And force the player to go around this way. Oh dear. The lag! Sorry. This is horrid. But like right there, it feels like you should be able to get through there, but you can't. And that's quite deliberate. So that does force the player to make a left turn. As you notice, can't go that way. I have to go around here and not die. But it's not like the player's completely out of options here. They can, if they so choose, they can just take the easy walk to the bottom left corner there and then, you know, carve a path for themselves to the end. Like, this isn't a pacifist challenge, if you will. But I'm just doing this pacifist to see, like, if it's even possible to do that. Ow. Yeah. You really can't afford to miss your inputs there, though. Like, you get stuck for even a moment, they'll get you. So... I'm not sure if you can tell by my voice chat, but I'm having a lot of fun with this. Like, this is really, really fun. No! Come on, okay. Alright. Let's try testing that, then going around. If I even can, if I need to move 5 feet without getting completely ganked. But actually, I wonder if I jump that, can I get there faster? Oh no! Oh, that's funny! Oh, that is so evil! Chat, look at this. I need it. I need to do that, Daddy. Yes! Yes! Perfect! That is so evil! That is so incredibly evil! And now we've glitched the game. Okay, maybe a little too evil. I've overstayed my welcome, chat. Now we completely broke through the collision in the game. So, afraid of that. I've seen this happen before, but it happens so infrequently that I can never quite figure out how it happens. Let's, it's this right here that's causing it. Let's shift this to the left, will that be too much? But yeah, I find it hilariously evil that the way the Snecks collision boxes currently are, they push you to the right, and because of the way the room is laid out. Oh, it happened again. What? What? That was on a normal... Huh. Interesting. What is happening? Is it just that I'm holding spacebar during a jump? Like... No? I almost wonder if the lag might be causing that. Because there's a very narrow window for the jump to reset itself. Yeah, Thomas starts out with power. Fair enough, Crackle, fair enough. Oh, wait, I realized something. Because of the way that's laid out, that actually has the player stuck, I need to... If the player gets stuck there, I feel like they would. I might need to fix that. Alright. Oh dear. Okay, that's not good. That's very bad. Let's try that. The stack in the corner might be a little too evil. Okay. So... Yeah, okay, I gotta move that snack. That snack needs to move. You know what I could do, chat, just to speed up testing this, so they keep dying a lot, which, you know, is quite, to be fair, is the intent of that room. But still, I do keep dying quite a bit. What I can do, I think if I just change this to 0, that should make it so that they can't actually hurt Dorothy. What's that? Yep, okay. So this'll speed up testing. Really, we're just trying to get the pathing down here. So I hop down. Everything seems scary. I'm jumping. I got slid over. No shenanigans. That's good. That makes sense. Okay. Jump. Everything seems to make sense so far. Getting janked around. Okay, so that's a little spot to get stuck on. That's actually good. Then force the player to really consider what their path is. Okay. Might want to move that snack a little bit to the left. Oh, that needs to be fixed. What actually does it need to be fixed? Hey, this way I can just shift that snack slightly lower, and then we'll be able to... Alright, what about here? Alright, there's enough space there, that's good. Okay, I can still walk that, so that's good. That's definitely a little stoppy spot. What do you think, chat? Do we close off this stoppy spot, or do we leave this in? Because I mean, to be fair, with how much chaos is in this run, having little breaks in the middle that the player has to realize exist, I think could be okay. As you know, this is fine, right? There's nothing wrong with this picture, right? And to be fair, I only stumbled across this by accident. Yeah, I think it's dead as well. Especially, I know there's the bottom left corner, but I think honestly, if the enemy span was too heavy, then this would just become a platforming challenge and not really an action RPG challenge. Because, like, what, Redford? Yeah, that's true. You can't stop us everywhere. You have to actually figure that out. So, I mean, obviously the bottom left corner is pretty obvious. That's enough space, but this spot is not obvious by any means, I don't think. Like, the player would definitely have to understand the limits of the reach of the snacks. Now, even right here, they can still hit us, no matter how we stand, which is good. I do find it funny that that yeets us to the right, so just like someone trying to shortcut spam there. Right, now if we're going this way, we can't go up that way, can't go that way. Again, I want to leave that in there just because it's such a massive troll. Well, not massive troll, but it's such a massive, like, hey, you should have gone the other way at the very end. I don't think it's too easy. Especially since this room's meant to be hard. So, well, hard for the tutorial dungeon's sake. It's still rattlesnakes, they're still stationary foes. You could just, you know, range battle your way through this or bait out the attacks and go that way. Uh-oh. And looks like the glitch happened again. I'm assuming this is a lag problem, because, again, I can't seem to find a way to replicate this when I'm testing, like, on my own time. But I need to, I wonder if there's a way I could hard code out, like, an anti-stuck situation like this, because the player shouldn't be in a, like, the player should not be stuck like this. This is silly. Maybe I could have, like, a timer that could play in the background so that if this is going on for more than a couple of seconds, then it forces the player out of it. I definitely need to come up with some kind of bug fix for this. This seems to be seemingly random and it can really mess with the flow of the game. So let's add that to our list of bug fixes. Create anti-infinite jump glitch bug fix. Bug description. After a jump, usually when there is lag during a stream, the player's jump animation is not reset, and consequently their height remains at the jumping height. While constantly looping the jumping animation. There is no way to cancel out of this glitch. Idea 1: have a timer in the background that plays that only increments after a player has jumped. If the player the timer increases every 50 milliseconds after when the jumping animation is playing. As soon as the falling animation plays, the timer stops and is reset. If the timer plays reaches 200 milliseconds and the jumping animation is still playing, force the animation to change to falling, and force the various flags related to falling and wall checks to be set to their state. To the state they would be in during normal falling circumstances. Alright, that's definitely something I'll have to work on. Because the last thing I want, chat, is for a player to just be having a happy little time and all of a sudden get that infinite jump glitch and just completely he messes with their enjoyment of the game. Because the fact that you could end up in a stuck situation like that, especially in a room like this, is really, really definitely not something we want to see. Now, granted, it could just be stream because of the lag caused by the stream, but I don't want to take any chances on that. Alright, let's try this again. So what I was trying to test this last segment is kind of evil because when you're running around like that, you can't actually... Aha! I see. Okay. I'm fine with leaving this in. I mean, for the player to even get here is hard enough, but the fact that if you just try to... as I'm looking at it like this, if the player's just nonchalantly trying to run around this, they either have to be sprinting to avoid that, or they would have to get super lucky, because the rattlesnakes certainly know how to turn on a dime. What happens if I... honestly, I think I like the way this room is currently right now. I like it. It's beautifully chaotic. Especially considering how simplistic this enemy type is. Like, you have 3 little safe zones, you know, one there, one here, one in the bottom left corner, so it's not like the player doesn't have an option to fight back here. But the player has to be aware of these safe zones, and only the bottom left, I think, is super obvious as a safe zone. Oh, hey, Copper. Welcome to the chaos. If you only like Dorothy taking 0 damages and for testing purposes, this is a bonus side area that's meant to be a challenge. And as you can see, it is absolute madness. And it's amazing. Pure madness. Pure chaos. Like Copper, I want you to see this. Like, just how purely insane this bonus area is. It's also physical damage back to what it normally is. Oh yeah, it tells us Avatar is probably a good way to show it off, but So what this is, Copper, is this is a bonus area. So to get here, you'd have to go through a pretty significant chunk of the dungeon lower floor below this area. And up here would be a nice, you know, item to pick up that would be very useful. But in order to get it, you have to get through this rub. Now, this rub is deliberately designed this way to be pure chaos, because as you can see, there's just rattlesnakes everywhere. And there's no real... The obvious safe spot is this corner right here, which is kind of in the middle of the path, so to speak. There also happen to be safe spots here, and those are areas where the player could conceivably just fight back against the rattlesnakes if they so chose, or the player could try to run through this. And, well, just have a look at what happens when you're just trying to go through this normally. Like, you have to be on your A game. You get stuck even somewhere that the rattlesnakes will get you. Then you need to be here and be like, okay, this was a little chaotic, so we'll try spraying through some sections. Okay. So it's doable, but you have to not get, like, overwhelmed by it, so to speak. Because on the other hand, let me show you what happens if you make even, like, one mistake. You're like, I get stuck, I'm dead. Super, super dead, because there's just so many things attacking you at the same time. Anyway, that's that section. I think makes sense the way it is currently now. Honestly, chat, what do you think, chat? Do you think we should get all the other rattlesnakes? Oh, wait, I just realized I need to test something. It is getting a bit later, so I don't want to go super late, but I am having fun now because we're out here. And that's what it's like to fall down the well, but I'm having a lot of fun here now that we can actually see how the levels sort of play. But it's also getting late. I think, you know, how adding the enemies would be a fun thing to do next stream. Okay, so what I want to test... Okay, do I get stuck? Okay, not really. Okay, so it does properly push us through. It's actually good that the Cabrattle stops you there, because it forces the player to think... Like, chat, you might say, like, Antomicx, why would you have, like, a stationary enemy stopping you somewhere? Well, the reason is it's a teaching tool. So, if you try to just run through this, the rattle stops you. So you have to decide, do I want to destroy this thing, or maybe teach the player that, hey, you know, through gameplay, I can just jump over this. I don't have to worry about it. Because, I mean, players who've played other Souls games might not be used to the idea that, oh, I can just jump over a hazard. But that's, you know, that's a perfectly valid evasion tactic in Heartwell. I'll also mention that I think this is a nice controlled environment for just a regular rattlesnake. Just again, you can walk around this, really low risk. Just meant to teach the player, but of course you're just walking straight, blindly. What? Oh dear, I don't think I have enough, do I not have enough of these? Okay, there we go. I was just missing out, I think, on one. Why wouldn't the player just defeat all the nets? Also, the glitch happened again. I really think that's probably a lab thing, because I wasn't against any slope there. So, I definitely need to have some kind of anti-something there to make sure that doesn't happen. What is even happening? I definitely think this is probably a lag issue. But regardless, you're right, Coppernickel. The player is perfectly, you know, the player is absolutely allowed to defeat everything in their path if they so choose. They can do that. It's just recognize that at the start of the game, your weapons are super weak. So the player will either have to grind quite a bit to make those weapons better, or, you know, defeat some bosses, get some better, get some higher damage default weapons. Alright, so many fanfits about all the snacks. And that's up to you, Copper Nicholson. But what I was trying to get at earlier is that I like that Cabrattle kind of stops the player in their tracks to just kind of walk this area. So the player could learn that they just jump over that. Ow. I like this area especially. Cabrattle against this. And I'll show you what I think is beautiful about this. So if the player's just spam jumping up here and not really paying attention, well, first that would happen, but then they run out of stamina, they get yeeted, and that's quite deliberate. I think there's enough space for the player to land here. Should probably test that. All right, what I think I'll do is I'll test the Cabrattle's collision in that top left corner, and then we'll probably call it a night, because there's a lot. Yeah, there's still plenty to do. But I'm definitely liking how this is coming along. No. No. Oh dear. Okay, this absolutely has to be lag. Because there was nothing for me to stop against there. Ow. Okay. Well, we definitely need to create some kind of anti-something there to make sure that jumping glitch doesn't happen. Because when there's no lag, it's fine, but we can't guarantee that. Who knows if the player doesn't have like a billion tabs open in Google Chrome or something. Like there's gotta be a way to fix that bug. Oh yeah, no, I've definitely seen the lad right now. It's just like, I really think it's coming after this, the stream at this point. I just want to do this platforming segment, lad. Happy little platforming segment. I wonder if I can make that with a sprint jump. I might be able to. Alright, chat. Nothing much enough to gain, right? YOLO! Yes! Perfect! Still. Okay. What I want to test is to make sure that the player has enough space. 1, to fall there, but 2, to land on the other side. Okay. Oh, the player actually gets yeeted upwards. That works. That works. Okay. Alright, I think we'll call that a night then. So, chat, if you're watching us on Twitch, feel free to stick around for a raid. But if you're watching us on YouTube and you like what you saw, please consider subscribing on YouTube. It's free to subscribe on YouTube. You can always change my layer. It's the right way to show support. If you're watching on YouTube, I hope you have an amazing night.